to the phones. I gather Senator Matthew Samuda is on the line. Good morning, sir.
How are you doing, Cliff?
I'm all right.
First time caller.
Oh, you're first? Yes. Welcome, sir.
Certainly to this program.
Yes.
And I have heeded the instructions of your previous call. I certainly won't be too long.
Okay.
I've listened to the discussions largely this morning and certainly other mornings. I understand and certainly share the feelings and the emotion that comes across when we're discussing the current crime and murder spike facing the country. It's not a situation that leaves anybody particularly happy. I think we have to acknowledge that it is not where any of us would want it to be. It is not in a position that leaves any of us with much comfort. But I think it's also prudent, Mr. Hughes, to share some of the things that the public may not yet be aware of by way of steps that the government is taking to alleviate the problem with both short, medium, and long-term solutions. Because, issues of personal safety and national safety certainly get very emotive responses. And, people aren't always in the space where they even want to hear the steps being taken. Because, to be honest, there are a number of steps being taken to alleviate the current spike and to make long-term and medium-term gains to provide Jamaican citizens far more safety than we currently have. There are infrastructural investments, there are investments in personnel, there are investments and work being done on processes, certainly within the police force. And there's legislative work also being done, some of which has been ventilated on the program already, so I won't dive too deeply into that. But I think some of the investments, just so that the public is aware, things like ballistic vests and helmets. The government has recently purchased 3,000 ballistic vests and 2,500 vests. This is contrary to what was done before. The police, in many cases, were using expired vests, leaving them insecure, not leaving them in a position to be motivated to actively pursue criminals. We have corrected this, and as I understand it, in a couple of weeks, these should be being distributed within the force. Additionally, when you look at the high rate of attrition within the police force, and you poll the number one reason for these police leaving, it invariably is not salary, but rather working conditions. What the government has done in the first phase is to engage, and the procurement is ongoing, for major repairs to 30 police stations. A further 197 stations will get minor repairs. So virtually every station in the country.
Out of the $45 million that I hear Minister Montague has set aside?
Well, that is for the minor repairs. The 30 major stations I understand the figure to be much more than that.
Oh, because that's where I was about to ask you. How would $45 million stretch across that? So the $45 million is for minor repairs, and how much is for the repairs of the 37 stations?
I don't have the exact figure here, so I wouldn't know it, but it is certainly more substantial than that.
Well, nobody can quarrel with that, In fact, I'm happy to hear that the vests are being ordered and distributed now. I'm very happy to hear about the 37 major stations. It is something I've drawn references to on several occasions here, that the conditions in which we ask the members of the JCF to work are simply appalling. And when you ask people to work in those conditions, no wonder they come out a road and then look on big people like you and me and call we boy, and treat people the way they treat too many Jamaicans. So I'm very happy to hear that 37 major police stations are to be repaired. Major repairs are to be done to them. Throughout what period of time?
I find the major, which I'd like to share with you, though.
Huh?
I know I've heard it said in the news before, but I don't think enough attention has been paid to it. 20 lawyers are being recruited to work within the JCF to do two things, as I understand the rule. They're to provide assistance to police in preparing cases, because certainly they would know what would help them as people who have been trained as such, as well as when there are issues and interviews with INDICOM, they can provide service to police, so that the initial expense of having representation when being interviewed. I believe these things will help significantly, certainly on the investigative side and certainly on the motivation side for our police to vigorously pursue.
Well, may I challenge you from where you sit? You can probably have more authority and power than me. Yes?
Sure.
Intelligence capacity, sir. We need to spend a lot more on intelligence. And let me be very specific. We are told by the High Command that 70% of the murders being committed in Jamaica are directly attributable to gang feuding and activities. Gangs. We're also told, Senator Samuda, that we have more than 200 gangs in this country. Yeah? And that figure has been with us for several years. We can dismantle all 200 in a year or two. But certainly, I would imagine that the police can tell us which of the 200 are the most dangerous and high priority producers of murders, and target those. What do I mean by target those? We have to be proactive in getting specially trained, recruited men and women to infiltrate the gangs on a sustained basis. Former Commissioner Hartley-Lewin said last week here that they have not focused on it. They have not sat on that, in a focused way. It's going to be difficult, very difficult, because it will mean disrupting the lives of those agents of infiltration. It means that you have to go spend more on those men and women and their families to protect them, because they may have to go live on the streets of Spanish Town or Flanker or Norwood, near motor garbage bin, so nobody not take them seriously, but them get themselves into these gangs and get the information. So when we go for them at 4 o'clock in the morning, by the time word get around, we have all of the top leadership, just like they do it elsewhere. But it takes long, painstaking investments and work. Why we can't do it?
So, Cliff, in raising the intelligence issue, I think 3 issues in how you discussed it have been raised in my mind. One is the legislative side. I think with what has been, if we accept that these 200 plus gangs operate largely from certain areas, the special zones of operation give you certainly a large tool in going in and dismantling those gangs. That's one.
No, sir. Tell me how you come to that conclusion.
Well, if gangs operate from special areas where the geography, certainly the citizenry and the high level of poverty allow them to thrive, and the legislation immediately triggers certain social investments, it keeps a high level of police presence and triggers a whole number of other actions.
No, all that will achieve, sir. You will disrupt their activities, but they simply go elsewhere and regroup. That's not what you want.
Agreed, you want to break them up, but
yes,
disruption in some cases cannot be a bad thing and cannot be something that is
and that is.
But
hold on, Mr. Samuda, because we have to be very smart. This is a relatively small island, yes, and it has happened before. The police establishes a presence in community in Hanover, which was told to me recently. Yeah? All the criminals do, they flee to Westmoreland or St. James, the surrounding parishes. So it cannot be that we're just going to disrupt and disperse.
And that's not what I'm saying, Cliff. If you give me a chance to
go ahead
to build through my argument, you'll see what I'm getting at. Because we started under the top line umbrella of intelligence. The other legislative point that I wanted to make, which I believe is something the government will need to take a serious look at very quickly, is the anti-gang legislation which was passed in the last administration. We certainly believe that the burden of proof for proving those things is a little too high, and there needs to be some amendments to allow for that legislation to be as effective as it genuinely can be with the existing intelligence that you have. So that is the legislative side. On the infrastructure side, we are far advanced with planning for national CCTV. If you look at what has happened in Montego Bay alone, though you're not seeing the results just yet because it is very, very recent that you've reached this point, you've increased your visibility by 50% in the last 6 weeks, as I understand it. What you also have being discussed with the national CCTV is border cameras. The criminals, as you mentioned, when they're disrupted in one area, have it far too easy to move around the country. Now, with the number of police officers that you have, it would be impossible for them to physically patrol every single motorway and manage the movement of people without the use of technology. This is something that we believe will make a fundamental dent in how criminals are able to move.
I agree with you.
The other thing that is not being mentioned as a part of...
Well, hold it for me. We're up on the break and then we have to wrap it up. I have a lot of callers holding.
My hands were steady. My eyes were clear and bright.
Yes, Senator Samuda, let's wrap this up quickly. Go ahead.
All right, so I'll just allude to 5 investments which have been made. We'll be very quick so that you can move on to your other callers. But in the intelligence capacity, certainly we've made 2 major investments already, which we expect to bear fruit, certainly within the coming months, and one which is to come. The 2 major investments, one which has been discussed but I don't think is appreciated by much of society in terms of what it represents, is the investment in our surveillance capacity through the ships and the plane as purchased for the country to protect our borders, which are largely porous. If you look at that in the fact that you pulled 672 guns off of the streets from the start of the year, it tells you just how important that is. The other investment that we've made, which is, I know, helping the police with their investigations seriously already, is a $500 million investment in your lab, in your forensic lab, which is already, as I understand, bearing fruit. Yes. And it represents why some of the wanted people that have been caught recently were taken off the road. The third one, which is to come, is significant investment in your data network. That is a problem for police stations which are littered across the country. That is something that we're working assiduously on, and more details will come.
When you say data network, what do you mean?
The Wi-Fi access, the internet access. It's not where it needs to be for a police force that must be connected but must be represented across a country with a very hilly interior, and represented all across the country. The final point I will make is that tangibly, I think citizens, certainly I travel a lot around through the ins and outs of the country, would recognize that in response to what has happened, there's a significant increase in police presence on the road. And to make that presence possible, it is on the back of the motor car purchase that we had made. 80 of the 200 are in the island, have been distributed. And my information is that in the next 4 to 6 weeks, the following 120 will be distributed.
May I suggest to you, Senator Samuda, that part of the investment in making the police mobile with vehicles, mobility these days is not restricted to more vehicles. Mobility these days is vehicles, what you spoke to a while ago, access to Wi-Fi, data, smartphones, yes, good, or laptops. All the patrol units should come now with whatever, whether it's a laptop or an iPad, so that they are connected wherever they are. That's mobility these days. Also, the most critical part, given the poor record of managing its fleet over the years, where that fleet has been abused for personal use and not police work, part of the investment in really getting rewards and returns from investing in the mobility must be a automated fleet management system, where the commissioner, the members of his high command, the divisional commanders, wherever they are, they can log in to see, well, there are 8 vehicles assigned to my division. The divisional commander can see where all 8 vehicles are at any moment. The technology is there.
And we agree with that, Cliff. I don't think you will find any pushback and discussions for how to implement that and assessments as to what such a system would cost.
Thank you, sir.
Is underway.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me, Cliff.
You're welcome.